My name is Margot Hayes, and I'm 66 years old. What I'm about to tell you changed my life forever. The funeral for my husband Ernest was the quietest day of my existence. There, beside his grave, I received a message from an unknown number that sent a chill through me. "I'm alive. That's not me in the casket," I replied, my hands trembling. "Who are you?" The response took my breath away. "I can't say they're watching. Don't trust our sons." That moment tore my soul in two. My world crumbled. When I saw Charles and Henry, my own sons, standing by the casket with strangely calm expressions, something was wrong. Their tears seemed forced. Their hugs felt as cold as ice. For 42 years, Ernest had been my partner, my refuge, my reason for living. I met him when I was 24 in the small town of Spring Creek. We grew up on the same dusty back roads, sharing modest dreams. I cleaned houses to support my sick mother. Ernest repaired bicycles in a small shop he inherited from his father. We were poor, but we were happy. We had something money couldn't buy. Real love. I remember the first time he spoke to me. It was a Tuesday morning. I was walking toward the market in my faded green dress and worn-out shoes. He stepped out of his shop, grease-stained hands, and smiled at me with a shyness that made me fall in love instantly. "Good morning, Margot," he said in a soft voice. "Need me to check out your bike?" I didn't own a bike, but I came up with an excuse just to talk to him. That conversation turned into dates under the big old oak tree in Town Square Park. Then into promises of eternal love. And finally, into a simple wedding full of hope. The first few years were hard. We lived in a 2-bedroom house with a tin roof. When it rained, we'd set out pots all over the house to catch the leaks. But we were happy. Ernest worked from sunup to sundown in his shop. I sewed clothes for the women in town. When Charles was born, I thought my heart would burst with happiness. He was a beautiful baby with his father's big eyes and my smile. 2 years later, Henry arrived, just as perfect. I raised them with all the love in the world. I sacrificed my own needs for theirs. Ernest was a wonderful father. He'd take them fishing in the river on Sundays, teach them to fix things with their hands, tell them stories before bed. I fed them, dressed them, comforted them when they cried. We were a close family. Or so I believed. As they grew up, things started to change. Charles, the oldest, was always ambitious. From a young age, he'd ask why we lived so modestly, why we didn't have a car like other families. Henry followed his lead in everything, as he always had. When Charles turned 18, Ernest offered him a job at the shop, but he rejected it with contempt. "I don't want to get my hands dirty like you, Dad. I'm going to be someone important." Those words hurt Ernest deeply, though he never said it to me. I'd see him sitting on the porch at night, staring at the stars with a look of sadness. His son had rejected not only his work, but his entire way of life. The years passed. To my surprise, Charles managed to make a name for himself in the business world. He got a job at a real estate company in the city. Henry followed soon after. They both started making money, far more than Ernest and I had ever seen. At first, I was so proud. My sons had achieved what we never could, escaping poverty, building a better life. But little by little, that joy turned into sadness. Visits became less frequent. Phone calls grew shorter. When they did come, they arrived in expensive cars, dressed in fancy suits, talking about investments and properties. They'd look at us with a strange mix of pity and shame. "Mom," Charles said to me during one of their sporadic visits, "you and Dad should move somewhere better. This house is falling apart." He was right, but that house held all our memories. It was where we'd raised our sons, where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd grown old together. It wasn't fancy, but it was our home. Ernest, always wise, would tell me, "Margot, money has changed our boys. We aren't enough for them anymore." I resisted believing it. I kept justifying their absences, their brief calls, their broken promises. "They're busy building their lives," I tell myself. "Someday they'll be the loving boys we raised again." But in my heart, I knew Ernest was right. We had lost our sons long before I lost. My husband. I just didn't know to what extent we had become strangers to them. The most drastic change came when Charles married Jasmine Albright, a woman from the city who never hid her disdain for our simple lifestyle. The first time he brought her home, she arrived in high heels that sank into the dirt of our porch, an elegant red dress that looked more expensive than everything I had ever owned. "Nice to meet you," she said with a forced smile, barely extending the tips of her fingers to greet me. Her eyes scanned our humble home with an expression I couldn't decipher, but it made me feel small. During dinner, Jasmine barely touched the food I had prepared with so much love. She moved the meatloaf around on her plate, cut tiny pieces of chicken, but ate almost nothing. Charles seemed nervous, constantly apologizing for things he had never been ashamed of before. "Next time we'll take them out to a restaurant," he whispered to Jasmine, thinking I couldn't hear, but I heard him. Every word pierced my heart like a knife. Henry, for his part, remained single, but adopted the same distant attitude as his brother. His visits were limited to special occasions. Even then, he always seemed in a hurry to leave, constantly on his phone, closing deals. Even during our conversations, "Mom, I have to go," he'd always say before it was time. "I have an important meeting early tomorrow." Family Sundays became a distant memory. Christmases grew cold and formal. My sons would bring expensive gifts we didn't need. They'd stay for 2 or 3 hours, then leave with evident relief. Ernest and I grew old alone, comforting each other. He continued to work in his shop, though his hands no longer had the same strength. I continued with my sewing, but my eyes weren't the same. We made do with our small income, proud not to ask for anything from our successful sons. "Do you know what the saddest part is, Margot?" Ernest said to me one night as we drank coffee on the porch. "It's not that they have money. It's that the money has made them believe we aren't important anymore." He was right, as always. My sons hadn't just changed financially. They had changed in their hearts. We were no longer their beloved parents. We were an uncomfortable reminder of a past they wanted to forget. Things got worse when Charles bought a $200,000 house in an exclusive neighborhood in the city. Henry did the same soon after, investing in a luxury condo that cost $150,000. Suddenly, our sons were owners of fortunes we couldn't even imagine. "You should sell this house and move into a retirement community," Jasmine suggested during one of her rare visits. "There are some very nice places for people your age. You'd be more comfortable." The word community hit me like a slap. A retirement community. After 40 years of building our home, after raising these sons with so much love, they wanted to send us to a home. "We don't need a home," Ernest replied with the dignity that always characterized him. "We're fine here in our house." But I saw the expression on Charles and Henry's faces. They supported Jasmine's idea. To them, we were a burden, a problem to be solved in the most convenient way. It was then that the more direct suggestions began. Charles arrived one day with papers in his hand. Documents he had prepared without consulting us. "Dad, Mom," he said with that fake smile he had perfected, "I've been thinking about your future. This house is worth at most $1,000. If you sell it, I can add some money, so you can move somewhere better. A better place." Us. There was no place better than the home where we had been happy for decades. But Charles didn't understand that. For him, everything came down to numbers, to monetary value. "Besides," he continued, "I think Dad should retire from the shop. He's already 70 years old. It's time to rest." Ernest looked at him with infinite sadness. "Son, working isn't a burden for me. It's what keeps me alive. What gives meaning to my days." "You could get hurt," Henry insisted, backing up his brother, as he always did. "At your age, an accident would be very dangerous." Their words sounded caring, but I sensed something more behind them. An impatience, an urgency I couldn't fully grasp. The following months were tense. My sons increased the pressure for us to sell the house. They brought real estate agents without telling us. They had it appraised without our permission. They even began to talk about what would be best for everyone. "Look," Charles said to us during one particularly uncomfortable dinner, Jessamine and I have decided to have kids soon. We'll need help with the expenses. If you sell the house and move to a smaller place, that money could be an early inheritance. An early inheritance. He was asking for our inheritance while we were still alive. The audacity of the request left me speechless. Ernest remained calm, but I saw his jaw tense. Son, when your mother and I die, everything we have will be yours. But while we're alive, our decisions are our own. Don't be stubborn, Henry cut in with a harshness. I had never seen from him before. You're old now. You can't keep living in the past. That night, after they left, Ernest and I stayed up talking until dawn. For the first time in our marriage, we discussed the possibility that our sons